So if the Mexican authorities do not succeed in getting the suspect or suspects extradited back to Mexico to face charges here, so does that mean that they just go free? There's nothing that can be done here in the United States?
Welcome back to another episode of Evil Strikes. I am your host, Boujee Hustla, and this is a Boujee Hustla production. If you're new to the channel, Evil Strikes is a new series that I started where I come on camera and share a true crime case while beating my face, most times. But due to the Shanquella Robinson case, all of the details have just been coming out relatively quickly, so I haven't been able to do that. But this coming weekend, there will be a new true crime story while doing my makeup, so stay tuned for that. And if that is your cup of tea, you might as well join the rest of us here and subscribe to the channel, get comfortable, because there are plenty more cases on the way. So for starters, you guys should definitely be hearing a major difference in the audio quality. So can I get a speaker emoji in the comment section if you can hear me crystal clear, and if you can tell the difference between the last couple videos versus this one. A few of you were saying you couldn't really hear me too well, so I went ahead and purchased a mic instead of relying on the built-in one. I think it made a big difference. So a quick disclaimer for anyone who is new to the Shanquella Robinson case: you want to definitely pause this video and go back to my first video, which I'll have linked in the description box for you guys, where you can get a good consensus of the case, and then you can check out some of the other videos that I have created to get yourselves caught up. So for everyone else, let's go ahead and dive into the updates, because I do have a couple of them. And please keep in mind that some of the things that I've said in this video was based on not having the knowledge of Dejanay being arrested, because as we know, that information dropped publicly in the middle of the day. So by the time this video was just about done, we as a whole were not aware that she was in custody already since the 28th of November. So there are going to be some places where I make statements based on, that mindset. So just keep that in mind. But nonetheless, a lot of the information in today's video still applies regardless. All right, so the first one is going to be in regards to the extradition report. So as most of us know, Mexico has issued an arrest warrant for a suspected woman as the direct aggressor. However, it does also include details of an ongoing investigation on whether charges will be brought against the other travelers, as well as medical staff or corrupted law enforcement. Okay, and I'm going to touch base on that a little bit later on. The updates that I have regarding this investigative reporter, Gerardo Zeninga, comes to us from another YouTube channel called The Lead Attorney. So this video, I believe, was dropped like 2 days ago, and it is a 4-hour long video because he does live streams. However, there was a lot of great information in that video, and some of my updates are based on the interview that he had with Gerardo Zeninga. So I highly recommend you guys check out that video whenever you can make time. He did take the initiative to break up the video into chapters, so you can kind of like bounce around to get the details regarding Shanquella's case. And then like right around the 35-minute mark is where he starts discussing the case with Gerardo Zeninga. Now I do want to forewarn you, the interview is in Spanish, so it's not like a clear communication like how I'm speaking to you guys right now. It's both of them communicating in Spanish, and then he's kind of like interpreting on top of the interview. So just kind of want to forewarn you, but I will provide you a brief recap. I didn't take all information from the video because I do believe in making sure you support the original creator. So again, if you want to hear all the details, make sure you check out his channel, and I will link the specific video regarding some of my updates that I got from him down in the description box as well. So for starters, let's go ahead and talk about who is Gerardo Zeninga and what role does he play in this case. So Mr. Zeninga is a Mexican investigative reporter, and he actually has about 27 years of experience working for Telemundo. You know, Telemundo. I can never not say it like that. Whenever I hear Telemundo, I have to say Telemundo. But yes, he worked for them for 27 years, and then he also has 5 years as an independent reporter. So, you know, after putting in his time, he decided, you know, it was time to do his own thing. And he's actually taken it upon himself to ensure that the narrative is not falsely written in regards to Shanquella Robinson's case. Now, of course, the entire Mexican government is not corrupt. However, the reputation they hold would lead that majority of them are, or a good amount of them are, which actually segues into why Mexico initially did not want to touch this case. Once word had got out about the police report and the autopsy report not lining up, they knew they did not want to further investigate, but unfortunately for them, the case had already blown up, which now meant that Mexican authorities had to face their own ugly truths or demons. Because let's face it, there should be no reason why the police report varies and varies significantly from the autopsy report, especially as a medical doctor. Because think about it, the medical doctor and the coroner, you're both in the medical field. Different subtitles, but you're still in the medical field, right? So if the doctor is reporting the accounts of what happened and what happened with the deceased and what led to her demise, those accounts should line up with the findings of the coroner, and it should corroborate the story. But instead, that report contradicted everything that was reported to the police. And that is why the doctor is now also being investigated as well. And for those that are new to the case, the police report mentioned that medical staff worked on the deceased for the better part of 2 hours before she was eventually pronounced dead. So just to kind of break that down, Shanquella was dead probably for the better part of 2 hours and 45 minutes to 3 hours. And how we can get to that conclusion is because the medical doctor stated that she was contacted at 2:30 and that it would take her about an hour to reach them. And according to the coroner, the medical report stated that she had passed away 15 minutes after sustaining her injuries. So that meant the doctor was either A, lying, or B, she was doing everything in her power to save Shanquella, when in actuality she had been working on a dead body the entire time, which is kind of peculiar for 2 reasons. Because I know I made mention of this either in a previous video or in the comments, but as a medical doctor, why did you not determine that this woman needed more help than you were able to administer and just take her to the hospital? Like, I still have questions about what the protocol is for medical staff when it comes to that, because I know here in America that would not have been the case. If a medical professional saw that she needed help, I'm sure they would have just sent her on her way to the hospital without question. Then my other question is, this medical doctor took an hour to get to them. Was there not any other medical assistance available at a much closer proximity? Like, why isn't anybody asking questions about that? Because according to reports, this villa is very prestigious. So if it comes with the honorary title of being that prestigious, would they not have a medical personnel team on standby or close enough to reach the property to avoid situations like this? I mean, that's just a thought, you know, but I'm just wondering, like, why was she the closest person? An hour, boy? And if that's the normal time frame for medical help to arrive anywhere in Mexico, I really feel for the people out there. So in any event, due to this severe inconsistency, this now meant that there had to be some corruption along the way. And to further corroborate that, the six were able to leave the country in the midst of a murder investigation of one of their own. That is literally unheard of in just about any country on this planet. So the only way they could have successfully removed themselves from the situation was more than likely to utilize the money that was stolen from Shanquella to pay off a person or a few people in hopes that this would just die down. You would actually be surprised, it doesn't take that much to bribe people in Mexico. There have been many a times where people have reported that Mexican law enforcement has turned a blind eye to the situation for some pesos. So circling back to the beating, this is where Mr. Zaninga comes in to kind of elaborate on what investigators are thinking in regards to the circulating video of Dejanay and Shanquella. So investigators were trying to figure out what initiated the whole ordeal. Now, this comes as a cultural difference because you have to remember in Mexico, there are little to no black people down there. It's just straight up pure Mexicans, right? So having said that, they're not accustomed to a lot of the things that we are here in America and other countries. So take that into consideration with what I'm about to say. So they noticed that when Dejanay was punching Shanquella in the midst of, beating her, she snatches something off of her head, and it appeared to be a pair of underwear that was on her head. So investigators, they're trying to make sense of what happened and come to the conclusion that maybe the underwear. Now, something else that was interesting in the reports was that they actually had Dejanay listed as a man. Yeah, they had her listed as a man. And not because of the rumors that probably were started here in America, but because of the accounts of what they witnessed with their own two eyes in Mexico. And again, this is based on a difference of culture, so keep that in mind, okay? So basically, they were stating that a maid had seen Dejanay kind of going back and forth and taking her wig on and off, just kind of, back and forth with it. And again, they don't wear wigs and stuff like that in Mexico. They're just very simple people. They live a simple life. And the only time they really see wigs is either like on Halloween or some type of cosplay, or, the working girls, the ones who are out there pretending to be women, the men wearing women's clothing. So that's why they assumed that Dejanay was probably a man. But I'm hoping that they have corrected that since adding that in the report. But that was also something to mention as well. Like, that's crazy. You're about to extradite someone and you have on the report that it's a man. That could mess everything up. There wasn't a man attacking Shanquella in that video, assuming that's who they're asking for, at least, because they still have yet to release the name, but most of us assume that it is her because she's the only one at this point visually beating Shanquella. So yeah. Now, another update, if you will. We all have heard about this second video that seems to be in existence, right? Initially, it started off as the rumor of Winter administering the deadly force onto Shanquella, ending her life, right? And since then, I feel like that story or narrative has kind of fizzled out, because now it is being reported that the same person who was who was assaulting Shanquella in the initial video was also seen in the second video, fighting this time with someone else. Now, according to Mr. Zaninga, who is giving the account of what's on the video, he did not see it himself. Just to clarify, he was told of the contents of this video by law enforcement because they're the ones who have seen this video. So what they're stating is that there is a person who heard what was going on in Shanquella's room and came from a back room somewhere in the villa rushing into the room to intervene this beating, while everyone else apparently is being a spectator and recording. And then of course Dejanay is the one administering these blows to Shanquella. So she attempts to break up this beating, and then that's when, like, right before she does or attempts to, apparently is why Dejanay's video, the one that's public, came to an abrupt stop. And then the next video is a continuation of what transpired after the attempt of the intervention rather began. Now, who the two females were in that video, again, was not named, but we could assume one of them is Dejanay. But again, they were not named, so I don't know if she was allegedly fighting with Winter or Elise. And I finally said her name right. I've been calling her Alicia this whole time. I don't know why Elise never came to mind. But in any event, some people are saying it's Winter that intervened because apparently she was the one who made the 911 call, but that is also speculation. And then other people are saying that it was actually Elise. But one thing I can say for sure is that everything is considered speculation, but we are, taking what Mr. Gerardo Zuniga is saying a bit more seriously, because he has provided other information regarding the case that turned out to be factual. So that is why I believe a lot of people are holding him to a higher standard as far as getting quote unquote leaked information or breaking news. But at the end of the day, the officials are still the main ones who have to confirm or deny everything that is being circulated. But regardless of who de-escalated the ordeal, fact still remains that after the attempt of de-escalation, they were all still somewhat in agreement of allowing the medical professionals to perform a bogus rescue. Now, another theory that I personally do have is, if it was in fact Elise who was the person trying to stop the beating, there was a good chance that she could have been scared that she would be next if she didn't go along with their plan, right? Because you think about it, Winter and Dejanay, they go back, they're besties, right? So the chances of them two being the ones in that video, in my opinion, are slim to none, which leaves the only other female in the room, Elise. So if that was the case, again, there's a possibility she could have been scared because they all agreed to basically alter what really happened for their personal gain. And she could have just been very, very afraid. Like, that is a real thing. People are very afraid to come forth with information or to speak up because they're afraid of retaliation against them. She's in another country, and maybe this alleged bribery happened right in front of her face. So if they agreed to take money, hush money essentially, to make this all go away, she probably was afraid that she'd be laying right next to Shanquella if she deviated from the plan. That's also a possibility to think about. Not saying that it's true, but it is a possibility. So evidently on this second recording that remains withdrawn from the public is where you can see this attempted intervention. Now fast forward to the doctor and the medical personnel, the police. So according to Mr. Zuniga, she, as in the doctor, is also being investigated as well, again because her story does not line up with the coroner's story. And in addition to that, the responding officers are also being looked into as well, because remember, the Cabo 6 were able to leave not only the scene but the whole country and go back home following the murder without resolution. So Mr. Zuniga's source states that there was definitely some payoffs involved to make that happen, and if they are found guilty, then they will also have to face justice in Mexico. Now, of course, we are all waiting for the arrest of this female that they've mentioned in the warrant. And a lot of us are wondering, like, how long is this going to take? And why is it taking so long? So according to Mr. Zuniga, it takes about 15 days for the extradition process to complete. It could very well still take another 1 to 2 more weeks before we see any real updates regarding this case. Now, I also discovered a news report / interview with a former assistant director of the FBI's Internal Operations Division, and he actually shed a little light on the why it takes so long. So let's take a listen.
All right, for more on this case, let's bring in George Pirro. He's a former assistant director of the FBI's International Operations Division. George, you just heard the reporting there from our colleague Lilia. What kind of role can the FBI play in a case like this?
Good morning. As you know, the FBI has authority to investigate crimes committed against U.S. citizens abroad, as well as crimes committed by U.S. citizens. So in this case, the FBI would be supporting our Mexican authorities in determining the cause of death and the circumstances surrounding this particular, what appears to be a homicide. The FBI would provide everything from technical, evidentiary, assistance that could help either the FBI and the U.S. Attorney's Office here prosecute or the Mexican authorities.
We should highlight the importance of what's known as Black Twitter as well. Shanquella Robinson's mother, in fact, says if it wasn't for folks online pushing for answers to these questions, it wouldn't have received the national attention it's getting now. George, from your point of view, now that things are really heating up, do you really consider this, because there's so much attention and we have extradition now being thrown around, that things are only just really getting started? And explain to us how the extradition process will work, since you've got the US and Mexico involved here on both sides.
As you can imagine, extraditing a U.S. citizen to a foreign country is a very complex and difficult process. And it's designed to be difficult to protect U.S. citizens. So the first step is the Mexican authorities have to reach the United States through diplomatic channels, provide sufficient documentation supporting the extradition. There are levels of review both at the State Department and then at the Department of Justice Office of International Affairs. If there is sufficient documentation or evidence to support the extradition, then it's forwarded to the U.S. Attorney's Office in the jurisdiction that has, where in this case it would be in North Carolina, and a judge will review and make a determination. There are appeals, so I can tell you extraditions can be a long process. It's a long process.
So, George, you mentioned that the FBI does investigate crimes like this one. So if the Mexican authorities do not succeed in getting the suspect or suspects extradited back to Mexico to face charges here, so does that mean that they just go free? There's nothing that can be done here in the United States?
No, absolutely not. So there is a federal violation where an American citizen who commits murder overseas, and in this particular case, it's a murder of another American, can be charged in the United States. And the FBI has historically investigated those types of crimes and brought individuals to justice. So in this particular case, there would be significant cooperation and discussion between the Mexican authorities or FBI office in Mexico City, and then of course in Charlotte, and the individuals responsible for the death could face federal charges in a U.S. court.
Which is, I know, what the family of Ms. Robinson want to see, those responsible brought to justice. George Pirro, thank you very much for your insight today.
Thank you.
So as you guys just heard, if Mexico chooses not to move forward with this case for any reason, FBI can swoop in, and the U.S. officials can take matters into their own hands and press charges against the Cabo 6. Now, as far as what charges they will receive and the severity of those charges will heavily rely on the evidence that they have so far. So we just have to wait and see and cross our fingers that they will get charged in Mexico because they don't deserve the convenience of being in a prison in America where family can still visit them and whatnot. Shanquella didn't have that luxury when she was in her last dying moments, so why should they? Now, another question I'm sure a lot of you have, including myself, is how much time would they be looking at facing if convicted in Mexico? So the lead attorney, he referenced an article that I also came across as well, where they mentioned that Article 308 of Mexico's Federal Penal Code is stated that if you commit a homicide during a fight, whether it was inadvertently or not, that you were looking at up to 12 years. No, excuse me. Yeah, 12 years. I think it was 12 years in prison. But that is based on a fight, homicide during a fight. And if we are reviewing this video, there was only one person fighting, right? Because Shanquella even verbally communicated that she was not going to fight as a response to Malik asking if she was going to fight back. So that would immediately debunk the homicide during a fight notion, at least to me. But he's the attorney, so I don't know. And I'm not trying to like create any type of animosity. I'm just making an observation, you know what I'm saying? So the charge specifically was femicide from what I last heard. And if that's the case, I've read in other places that femicide comes with a sentence of anywhere from 40 to 60 years. And they were also looking at increasing that time by 5 more years to 45 to 65 years. So you guys let me know down in the comments if I'm right or if I'm wrong. At the end of the day, I just want a correct answer to see exactly what they would be looking at facing. Now, assuming the person is Dejanay, once they collect her and bring her back to Mexico, she'll have a hearing where they will present all of the evidence that they have built against her, and then that will be her opportunity to save face. So either she can give her version of the accounts of what happened in that villa, or she can choose to remain silent. I'm assuming she has legal representation, but if she doesn't, it's in her best interest to talk, to be honest. And I don't see why she wouldn't, being that she's being pushed as the main suspect of this crime, which for good reasoning, there's video proof. So based on what she decides to tell authorities in combination with what they already have, will determine what happens with the remaining Cabo 6. Now, according to the lead attorney, this whole hearing process could take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. So basically, she will give her side of the story, they will deliberate, and it will be a judge who ultimately decides what she'll be convicted of and also how much time she will be facing, presuming she's the one that they're looking for. And then we still also have to wait to see what they're going to do about the other 5. Do they also have arrest warrants going out for the others? Or are they waiting for the said female to be extradited back to Mexico before they make their next move on the rest of them? So again, only time will tell what is going to happen here, but I just really want this to be over, especially for the family, because every day that this drags out is another agonizing day that they have to remember what happened to their family member. So keep your eyes peeled for the next upload, which hopefully will be this coming Saturday. I do have a lot more true crime cases. I just haven't had time to edit due to the frequent updates with the Shanquella case, but I am going to start working on those. A couple of them are Thanksgiving cases. One of them is regarding the 3 black friends who visited, you guessed it, Mexico, but a different city. And unfortunately, they did not make it back. So I'll be talking about that true crime case as well. I think that's the next one if I'm not mistaken, but it's definitely within the next 3 uploads. So if you're not already a bougie true crimer, I don't know what you're waiting on, you might as well subscribe, join the rest of us, and get comfortable, because there are definitely more cases to talk about. So on that note, don't forget to share, and like, and I'll see you all on the next episode of Evil Strikes. Take care.